How do you make people fear you without shouting, without threats, and without even speaking a word? What if your greatest power wasn't your fists or your words, but your silence? Imagine standing in front of a wild predator, completely still, utterly unreadable. That tension is more terrifying than any roar. True power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It lingers quietly, causing hesitation, doubt, and fear in the minds of others. Because what people can't read, they can't predict. And what they can't predict, they fear. Think of it like this. A chess grandmaster sits motionless, eyes scanning the board. His opponent fidgets, second-guesses every possible move, and sweats under pressure, not because of anything said, but because of the calm, unreadable presence before him. That's the essence of silent power. In today's video, we'll explore 7 silent strategies rooted in Stoic philosophy. These aren't just tips. They're tools to forge an unshakable presence. Master them, and you won't need to demand respect. You'll command it, and even more than that, your enemies will fear what you might do next. Let's begin. 1. Master your emotions. One of the most effective and underrated ways to make your enemies uneasy is this: control your emotions. Sounds simple, but anyone who has tried it under fire knows how incredibly difficult it is. When someone insults you, mocks you, or pushes your buttons, your first instinct is to react, to defend yourself, to strike back. It's human, but that immediate emotional response is exactly what gives your opponent the edge. The moment you snap, whether in anger, frustration, or defensiveness, you show your weakness. You reveal that you can be controlled. But when you don't react, when you stay calm, unfazed, and indifferent, that's when your real strength becomes visible. You flip the power dynamic. They lose control because you didn't. Picture this. They try to provoke you, expecting a reaction, and you just look at them still, silent, unmoved. That moment, that silence, it's louder than any scream. Your calmness becomes their discomfort. That's exactly what the Stoics taught. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." It's not in yelling, not in matching their rage, but in standing firm in stillness while the storm rages around you. Let me tell you a story to bring this to life. There was a man, let's call him Thomas, who worked alongside someone constantly trying to get under his skin. This colleague would make sly comments, question his ideas, even challenge him in front of others. At first, Thomas would respond, sometimes with logic, sometimes with frustration. But every time he reacted, he felt like he was losing ground. Then, one day, he made a conscious decision: no more reactions. The next time this person tried to needle him, Thomas did nothing. No words, no facial reaction. He just stayed calm, almost like he didn't even hear the insult. And something amazing happened. The aggressor started to falter. They looked unsure, frustrated, even embarrassed. Over time, they backed off altogether, because there's no satisfaction in provoking someone who won't bite. Silence became Thomas's shield, and eventually, his quiet strength turned into quiet dominance. So, how can you master your emotions like that? Step 1. Know your triggers. Understand what makes you feel reactive and why. Awareness is the first step to control. Step 2. In moments of stress, breathe. Seriously. Deep, steady breaths reset your nervous system. It sounds small, but it's powerful. Step 3. Remind yourself that staying calm doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. It's not weakness, it's control. Because at the end of the day, the person who stays calm when everyone else is losing their head is the one truly in charge. Now that you understand the power of emotional control, let's move to the next silent strategy, the one that builds psychological pressure without saying a single word. Previously, we explored how mastering your emotions makes you untouchable. Now, let's take it one step further, into a deeper, more commanding realm of influence. Stu. Maintain an unshakable presence in a world constantly clamoring for attention. Real power belongs to those who don't need to shout, the ones who remain, calm in chaos, silent amid noise. Those are the people others instinctively respect. True strength isn't about how loud you can get or how visibly angry you can become. It's about mastering yourself so completely that nothing shakes you. When you carry that kind of inner stillness, you become unstoppable, not because you push harder, but because you stand firmer. Let's talk about what it means to maintain an unshakable presence. There's a type of confidence that commands respect without ever needing to ask for it. It's not flashy, it doesn't try to dominate the room. Instead, it's a quiet, grounded energy, an inner knowing that radiates outward. You don't have to say much. Sometimes you don't have to say anything at all. People just feel it. This presence is built on self-assurance, but never arrogance. That's what makes it so compelling. Because here's the truth. Confidence without arrogance is deeply intimidating. When you know your worth without needing to constantly prove it, others sense that you operate on a different level. You're not chasing approval, you're anchored, you're clear, and that clarity makes people pay attention. It shows in your energy, your posture, your movement. Every detail becomes part of your message. You carry yourself like someone who's earned their place in the world. You walk with intention. You speak with clarity, or you remain silent, letting your presence do the talking. When you do that, when you stand tall, take up your space unapologetically and move with purpose, people don't just notice. They respect you, not because you asked for it, but because they sense you don't need to. This is where Stoic wisdom quietly supports us. Lao Tzu once said, "Silence is a source of great strength." It may seem simple, but those who truly understand it live it. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means control. It means you're so grounded in who you are that you don't need to fill the room with noise. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just are. And in that stillness, there's power, the kind of power that makes others lean in, curious, cautious, sometimes even a little afraid. Let me give you a real-life example. A man I once knew, we'll call him Ethan, wasn't the loudest in the room. In fact, he rarely spoke unless he had something meaningful to say. But people noticed him immediately. There was something in the way he carried himself. Ethan's posture was always upright, relaxed but deliberate. He never rushed his movements, never fidgeted. His presence never felt forced. Yet somehow it always shifted the energy of the room. When he joined a conversation, people instinctively lowered their voices, not because of intimidation, but because of the quiet power he radiated. He didn't need attention, and that's precisely why he received it. So, how can you cultivate this kind of unshakable presence? First, stand tall. Your body speaks long before your mouth does. Straighten your spine. lift your chin, and let your stance reflect your strength. No slouching, no shrinking. You have every right to be here. Second, move with purpose. Whether you're entering a room, taking a seat, or simply reaching for something, do it intentionally. Slow is smooth, and smooth is powerful. When your actions are deliberate, they send a clear signal. I'm in control. Finally, embrace silence. Resist the urge to over-explain, overshare, or outshine. Let your presence speak. When you stop performing for validation, people start to see your true strength. In the end, real power doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need noise. It's found in quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't waver, even when the world around you is spinning. In the last section, we talked about presence, the kind that doesn't demand attention but naturally draws it. Now, let's explore the next layer of silent power, letting your actions speak for you. 3. Let your actions speak in a world overflowing with noise, opinions, and promises. There's something deeply powerful about a person who simply acts. No boasting, no need for applause, just quiet, consistent movement in the direction of their values. We live in a time where it's easy to talk. Everyone has big plans, bold dreams, and loud declarations. But as you've likely seen, words are cheap. They can impress in the moment, but they quickly fade. What lasts, what people remember, is what you do. Your true strength, your real value, your actual character. They aren't found in what you say. They're revealed in your behavior, in how you show up day after day, in the decisions you make when no one's watching, in the work you keep doing even when no one's applauding. The most effective way to show who you are isn't through explanation or self-promotion. It's through consistent action. When you embody discipline, when you stay resilient despite challenges, when you keep pushing forward with quiet purpose, that's what others notice. You don't have to talk about your dedication. You show it. And here's the powerful part. Actions don't need permission to speak. They don't wait to be understood. They leave evidence. Proof. They say, I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to get it done. And that's when people start paying attention, not because you told them to, but because they can't ignore what you've shown. This principle is deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy. The Stoics believed that character wasn't something you talked about. It was something you practiced over and over again, day after day, in small, quiet, consistent ways. Stoicism is about showing, not telling. And the more you show up in alignment with your values, the more your actions will speak for you. Let me give you a real example. There was a man, let's call him Jack. Jack had big dreams, and he wasn't shy about them. He'd tell anyone who would listen about his vision, his plans, his future success. People were inspired at first, but over time, something shifted. Jack wasn't following through. Weeks passed, then months. The same stories, but no results. Eventually, the people around him stopped listening, not out of cruelty, but because talk without action becomes noise. Then one day, Jack had a realization. If he wanted to be taken seriously, he had to stop talking and start doing. So he did. He began. Showing up early, working late, staying focused, not for attention but for progress. Slowly, consistently, he started building. And over time, people noticed. Not because he told them to, but because the result spoke louder than anything he ever said. So how can you let your actions speak louder than words? First, prioritize. Consistency. One great effort means nothing without repetition. Show up every day, especially on the days you don't feel like it. Second, pursue excellence. Don't just get by. Don't settle for good enough. Whatever you do it. Well, the details matter. Third, stay focused on what you can control, your work ethic, your attitude, your habits. That's where real power is built. At the end of the day, words can be forgotten, doubted, or twisted. But your actions, they leave no room for debate. They become your legacy, and they'll speak for you long after you've gone silent. Previously, we explored the power of letting your actions speak, showing the world who you are through consistent effort, not empty promises. Now we shift to something equally crucial: how you protect your emotional power in the face of disrespect. 4. Never overreact to insults. When someone insults you, the first instinct is often the most destructive: to strike back, defend yourself, or prove them wrong. It's human nature. But here's the truth: overreacting gives away your power. Every time you respond with anger, frustration, or emotional defensiveness, you hand control to the person who insulted you. You validate their words. You show them exactly where your buttons are and how easily they can be pushed. That's not strength. That's surrender. But when you choose not to react, when you stay calm, composed, and indifferent, you reverse the power dynamic entirely. Your silence unsettles them. Your indifference forces them to question themselves. Why didn't you respond? Why didn't it get under your skin? That question haunts them. And in that silence, you win. There's something uniquely powerful about being unaffected. It's not apathy, it's control. And it's the kind of control that frustrates those who seek to provoke you. This is why the Stoics considered indifference to insults a form of strength. They taught that your emotional state is your responsibility, not something dictated by others. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." It's a simple truth, but incredibly powerful when lived out. The Stoics believed that insults only have the power you give them, and when you don't react, you starve the insult of its fuel. You preserve your peace, you maintain your dignity, and most of all, you stay in control. Let me share a real-life example. There was a woman I knew. Let's call her Linda. She worked in a fast-paced environment and had a colleague who clearly had it out for her. This person would constantly make passive-aggressive comments, throw jabs during meetings, and even spread gossip behind her back. At first, Linda did what most people would. She defended herself. She tried to set the record straight, sometimes even argued back. But every time she responded, the situation escalated. The colleague became more confident, more relentless. And then one day, Linda had enough. She decided to try something different. The next time an insult came her way, she stayed perfectly calm. No reaction, no rebuttal, no attempt to correct the lie. Just a composed silence and a steady gaze. Something shifted. Her colleague, expecting the usual reaction, stumbled. They didn't get the satisfaction they were after. Over time, the behavior stopped altogether. Why? Because the game only works when you play. And Linda stopped playing. So how can you avoid overreacting to insults? First, practice self-awareness. When someone throws verbal poison your way, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Second, embrace emotional detachment. Remind yourself that their words are a reflection of them, not of you. Third, stay rooted in your values. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone who's trying to drag you down. When you rise above petty attacks, you rise above the person making them. And that in itself is a quiet form of victory. Previously, we learned how indifference to insults disarms your enemies and protects your inner peace. Now let's take that protection to the next level by controlling what people know about you. 5. Control what they know about you in a world where everyone's watching, analyzing, and quietly forming opinions. The greatest advantage you can have is mystery. We live in an age of oversharing, where people constantly reveal their thoughts, goals, and even their insecurities without a second thought. But here's the problem. The more others know about you, the easier it becomes for them to manipulate or undermine you. If people can predict your next move, they can control it. If they know your weak spots, they can press them. And if they know exactly what you want, they can use it as leverage. That's why one of the most strategic forms of power is controlling what others know about you. This isn't about being dishonest, it's about being intentional. You don't owe full access to everyone around you. Not every part of you needs to be visible. In fact, the more you keep to yourself, the more unpredictable and powerful you become. Think about it like chess. If your opponent knows your entire game plan, your chances of winning drop significantly. But when your next move is unclear, you become dangerous. Stoic wisdom supports this fully. Sun Tzu said it best: appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. Why? Because unpredictability creates pressure. When others can't read you, they can't prepare for you. They hesitate. They second guess. And in that hesitation, you gain the upper hand. Let me tell you a true story. There was a man I once knew. Let's call him Chris. Chris believed in openness. At work, he shared everything: his goals, his personal struggles, even the projects he was struggling with. He thought it would build trust and connection. But over time, things started to shift. Colleagues began using that information in subtle ways. If he admitted he was overwhelmed, suddenly he was seen as less reliable. If he mentioned stress, they'd question his focus or quietly apply pressure when he was most vulnerable. Eventually, Chris realized something critical. He had given away too much. So he stopped. He began keeping more to himself. He didn't lie, he just stopped over-explaining. He kept his plans private and his emotions in check, and something powerful happened. His co-workers started treating him differently, with more caution, more respect, because they couldn't predict his every move anymore. They couldn't use his openness against him, because he no longer gave them the opportunity. So, how can you control what others know about you? First, be intentional with what you share. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Choose wisely. Second, embrace mystery. When you're less predictable, others are less able to control or manipulate you. Third, use your strength strategically. Sometimes showing vulnerability is a tactic. Sometimes staying silent is the most powerful. Message: at the end of the day, the less people know about your inner world, the more power you hold in the outer one. Not every thought needs to be voiced. Not every weakness needs to be known. Keep some parts of yourself hidden and watch how much harder it becomes for others to gain power over you. In the last section, we talked about the power of guarding your inner world, how controlling what others know about you makes you harder to manipulate. Now, let's go deeper into that strategy by shifting the focus from what you reveal to what you do, quietly. 6. Make power moves in silence. In today's world, where everyone seems eager to share their goals, updates, and dreams the moment they're born, there's a rare, quiet strength in doing the opposite. In keeping your moves hidden, in letting your success speak after the work is done. There's real strategy in making power moves in silence. When you announce your plans too early, you give people the opportunity to interfere. Whether they mean to or not, they can insert doubt, distractions, or discouragement. They can question your decisions, offer unsolicited opinions, or even actively try to sabotage your momentum. But when you keep your next steps private, you deny them that access. You protect your path. You eliminate the noise and distractions that often come with outside input. You move in stealth, not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. Here's the truth. The more you talk, the more resistance you attract. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have ambition. It means you don't need to announce it at every turn. When you work quietly, the only thing people see is your results, and that is what makes the biggest impact. Progress loves silence, and so does power. The Stoics deeply understood this. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That one line says it all. You don't need to justify your vision. You don't need to sell your dreams. You simply need to live them. Your discipline, your consistency, your daily grind. That becomes your philosophy in motion, and the results you create become proof of what you believe in, louder than any explanation ever could. Let me give you a real example. There was a woman I knew. Let's call her Emma. Emma was someone who used to talk about everything she was planning. New projects, big goals, next steps. She'd share it all with friends, coworkers, and anyone willing to listen. At first it felt empowering, but over time she noticed a pattern. The more she talked, the more resistance she faced. People would offer unsolicited advice. Some would question her decisions. Others would outright doubt her abilities. And the worst part? It began to affect her. The feedback, the skepticism, the noise, it started to weaken her confidence. So she made a decision. Emma stopped talking. She stopped announcing. She kept her goals private and poured all her energy into execution. Quietly, consistently, no updates, no explanations, and when her success finally showed, it was undeniable. There were no debates, no doubts, no justifications needed. Her results spoke louder and clearer than words ever could. So how can you start making power moves in silence? First, keep your plans to yourself. Avoid announcing what you're going to do until it's already done or too far along to stop. Second, stay focused. Talk less. Execute more. Every time you speak about your goals, ask yourself, is this helping my focus or distracting from it? Third, let your results speak. When you stay quiet and deliver, people won't just listen, they'll respect you, because they'll see that you don't need applause to keep going. At the end of the day, quiet progress is the most unstoppable kind. It builds momentum without interference. And by the time people realize what you've built, it's already too late to stop you. Previously, we discussed the power of moving in silence, how your results speak louder than your words ever could. Now let's turn inward and unlock the most personal and liberating power of all, being unapologetically yourself. 7. Be unapologetically yourself. In a world obsessed with image, validation, and fitting in, there's something truly rare and deeply powerful about someone who chooses to stand firmly in their identity without apology. It might sound simple, just be yourself, but in practice it's one of the hardest things to do. Society teaches us to adjust, to conform, to seek approval at every step. We're told to play it safe, say the right things, blend in, don't make waves. But here's the truth. The moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you become untouchable. When you fully embrace who you are, your values, your voice, your presence, you stop living on other people's terms. You stop trying to impress those who don't matter. And something incredible happens. The power dynamic shifts. You're no longer chasing acceptance. You're simply being. And that energy, it's magnetic. People instinctively respect someone who doesn't flinch in the face of judgment. Someone who doesn't shrink themselves to fit in. Someone who stands tall, fully authentic, even if it means standing alone. Because that kind of presence is rare, and rare things are valuable. This is where true Stoic wisdom shines through. The Stoics believed that inner peace and strength come from living in alignment with your nature, not the expectations of others. They taught that trying to win approval is a never-ending trap. As long as you chase it, you give others control over your worth. But when you stop trying to fit in, you become free. Truly free. You stop measuring yourself against external opinions. You start honoring your own values. You begin living on your terms. And that shift, internal and powerful, can't be shaken by anyone. Let me share a story. There was a man I once knew. Let's call him Jake. Jake had always tried to blend in. At work, he'd adapt his personality depending on who was in the room. With friends, he'd say what he thought they wanted to hear. He believed that fitting in would lead to success, connection, maybe even happiness. But over time, it drained him. He felt like a stranger to himself, constantly performing, constantly adjusting. And despite all his efforts, he still felt misunderstood. Like people respected the mask, not the man behind it. Then something changed. Jake stopped pretending. He started expressing his true thoughts, even if they weren't popular. He stood by his values, even if others didn't agree. He began to own his quirks, his opinions, his style, everything that made him him, and suddenly, everything shifted. The people who only liked the version of him that was convenient drifted away. But the people who respected him, the real him, started to show up. And more importantly, Jake started to respect himself. So how can you be unapologetically yourself? First, stop performing. You don't need to twist yourself into someone else's idea of acceptable. Second, embrace your truth. Speak it. Live it. Let your actions and values reflect who you really are, not who others expect you to be. Third, let go of needing to be liked, because when you stop needing approval, you gain something far greater: self-respect. At the end of the day, being fully yourself is the boldest power move you can make. You no longer rely on others to tell you who you are. You decide. And that kind of self-possession. That's the kind of strength people fear and admire. In the last part, we saw how Jake broke free from the exhausting cycle of approval seeking, and how that simple but bold shift transformed how others saw him. Now let's close this journey by turning that same mirror toward yourself. For years, Jake would adjust his personality depending on who he was around. He laughed at jokes he didn't find funny. He hid his accomplishments so he wouldn't appear too confident. He filtered everything about himself just to avoid standing out, but over time, that mask became heavy. He felt drained, disconnected, like he was living someone else's life instead of his own. And that's when it hit him. The more he tried to be liked by everyone, the further he drifted from who he really was. So, he made a decision. He stopped pretending. He started speaking his truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. He stood by his beliefs, even if they weren't popular. And something powerful happened. The moment he stopped trying to impress others, they began to truly respect him. People admired his honesty, his quiet confidence, his refusal to fold under pressure. And the best part? Jake finally felt free. He didn't need to wear a mask anymore because he had become someone who no longer needed permission to be himself. So how can you step into that same power? First, stop seeking validation. You don't need it. Your worth isn't up for debate. Second, embrace your uniqueness. The very things that make you different, they're your strengths, not flaws. Let them shine. Third, live by your own standards, not society's, not your peers, yours. Define your values and stick to them, no matter what others think. Because when you start living authentically, something extraordinary happens. Your life begins to align. The noise fades, the masks fall away, and what's left is real, raw, and powerful. At the end of the day, when you stop trying to fit in, you stop being held back by the expectations of others. You become untouchable, not because you're shouting to be seen, but because you're quietly owning your space. So own who you are, live your truth, and watch how the world begins to respect you, not for the mask you wear, but for the strength you carry.